When Xianing was just 10 years old, his father passed away without warning. At the funeral, the family lawyer, Uncle Zhao, stepped forward and presented a choice that would define the boy's entire life. He could either stay with his mother, Lilan, or walk away with the $200 million his father had left behind. In his past life, Xianing had made the wrong choice. He had run to his mother, wrapped his arms around her legs, and begged through tears to stay with her. He had believed with every piece of his child's heart that she needed him just as much as he needed her. He was wrong. The moment Lilan got her hands on his father's death compensation, she wasted no time. Within 3 months, before his father's ashes had even gone cold, she had happily remarried. The man she chose was someone she had always introduced as Uncle Zhao, the same man who had supposedly been helping their family through their grief. Uncle Zhao moved into their home. He slept in the same bed where Xianing's father once slept, and Xianing became invisible, a burden no one asked for. Xiao also had a son named Liang, 2 years older than Xianing. To keep Liang happy, Xiao treated Xianing like a thorn in his side. Liang beat him, mocked him, and humiliated him without a trace of mercy. The $200 million their father had left behind became the family's personal entertainment fund. It paid for Liang's lavish lifestyle, his trips, his girls, his reputation. Meanwhile, Xianing scraped together loose change just to pay for tutoring. He was pulled out of school before high school even ended. They called it making him independent early. For 10 long years, Xianing carried bricks on construction sites. He worked until his body had nothing left to give. One day, exhausted beyond his limits, he collapsed and fell onto a pile of burning steel rods. He never got back up. Now looking back at that pathetic, wasted life, Xianing felt only one thing, that from beginning to end he had been completely and utterly foolish. But fate had given him something rare, a second chance. And here he was again, standing at that same crossroads. Lilan stood before him, weeping like a pear blossom drenched in rain. Her body had gone limp, as if her bones had turned to clay. If no one held her, she looked ready to collapse onto the floor at any moment. "How could you leave us like this?" she wailed, her voice cracking with what sounded like unbearable grief. "We're a widow and an orphan now. How are we supposed to survive?" In his past life, Xianing had fallen for this performance completely. He had believed she was shattered. He had believed she couldn't live without him. But now as he watched her with cold, steady eyes, he could see what he had missed before. Buried deep beneath the tears and the trembling, a flicker, a sharp, hungry gleam, greed, urgency. He wasn't moved, not even slightly. Lawyer Zhao stepped forward. He let out a quiet sigh and rested his hand on Xianing's shoulder. Then he reached into his briefcase and pulled out a sealed document. "Lilan," he said, his voice heavy. "This is the will that Ning prepared before he passed. He thought of everything." He paused. "The total estate comes to $200 million, all notarized. There are 2 options. First, if Xianing remains in your custody, the money will stay under your control as compensation and child support until Xianing comes of age." The moment those words left his mouth, Lilan's breathing changed. Her chest rose and fell faster. Her eyes locked onto the document with a frightening intensity. "Second, if Xianing chooses not to stay with you, the funds will be transferred into a trust, managed entirely by me. Xianing will have full control over it when the time comes. You will receive nothing." The room went silent. Every pair of eyes in that funeral hall turned toward a 10-year-old boy. Lilan's body stiffened. She stared at Lawyer Zhao as if she couldn't believe he had dared offer such an option. Then, in an instant, she rearranged her face into a shattered, heartbroken expression and pulled Xianing tightly into her arms. "Lawyer Zhao, how could you even say something like that?" she sobbed loudly. "How could I ever give up my son? Xianing is my whole world." But even as her voice broke with emotion, her fingers dug sharply into Xianing's arm. She leaned down to his ear, and in a voice like cold venom, she whispered, "Don't you dare say a single wrong word. You're my son. Your money is my money. Say anything stupid and I will make you regret it." In his past life, those words had made him tremble with fear. Her tears had made him emotional. Her desperation had made him cave. But now all he felt was disgust. He could feel the trembling in her fingers. Not from grief, not from sorrow. It was excitement. It was nervousness. $200 million. She had never seen that kind of money in her entire life. Even now, she was already daydreaming about the future. Her happy life with Xiao, the comfort, the freedom, all paid for by her dead husband's legacy. Slowly, quietly, Xianing pulled himself free from her grip. He straightened up. He looked directly at Lawyer Zhao, and in a calm, clear voice he said, "Uncle Zhao, I choose the second option. I choose the $200 million. The funeral hall went absolutely silent, the kind of silence where you could hear a pin drop. Everyone froze. Mouths fell open. Eyes went wide. Leland's carefully crafted expression of grief cracked. Slowly at first, then completely dissolving into pure shock and disbelief. "Xianing," she screamed, her voice sharp enough to split the air. "What did you just say?" He repeated it, calm, unhurried. "I don't want you. I want the money." Leland lunged at him like a woman who had lost her mind, hand raised, ready to strike. But someone caught her wrist. Lawyer Zhao. His face had gone iron gray. His voice was like stone. Leland, control yourself. You are standing in front of Brother Ning's memorial, and this is Xianing's choice to make, not yours. He's just a child, she shrieked. He doesn't understand anything. You must have put him up to this. Lawyer Zhao shook her hand off with visible disgust. I'll say it one more time. This is Brother Ning's legal will. It carries full legal weight. Now that Xianing has made his decision, I will begin the process immediately. He looked at her steadily. As of today, you are no longer his legal guardian. Leland went completely still. She stared at Xianing, and in her eyes, beneath the disbelief, was something raw and ugly. Pure hatred. As if he were her enemy. As if she couldn't comprehend how her always quiet, always obedient son had suddenly become someone so cold, so different. But Xianing didn't care. He walked over to Lawyer Zhao and tugged gently at the edge of his sleeve. Uncle Zhao, he asked quietly. Did Dad know? Did he know all along? Lawyer Zhao's body stiffened slightly. He knelt down slowly and looked into the boy's eyes for a long, long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was thick with pain. Your father was a very smart man, Xianing, and he loved you more than anything in this world. Xianing's eyes went red. His father had seen everything. He had known about Leland's shallowness, her selfishness, her betrayal, and he had endured it all in silence, just so his son could grow up with what looked like a complete family. But when the diagnosis came, when he knew his time was running out, he had quietly built this escape route, just for Xianing. In his past life, Xianing had destroyed it with his own hands. He had thrown away his father's final act of love, without even realizing it. Never again. The relatives eventually dragged Leland out of the hall. As she was pulled away, the look on her face, that poisonous, seething hatred, was something Xianing burned into his memory permanently. Not because it hurt him, but because he wanted to remember exactly who she was. The moment he had made his choice, the bond between mother and son had ended. What remained now was not grief, not regret, just the clean, quiet truth of what she had always been. Lawyer Zhao became his legal guardian that same day. He was an honest man, a reliable one, someone his father had trusted completely. After the funeral, he took Xianing home, and that evening he sat the boy down and placed a long, detailed investment list on the table in front of him. These are all the projects your father and I researched together before he passed, he said quietly. I've been holding on to them. Xianing didn't even glance at the top of the list. He flipped straight to the last page. Uncle Zhao, he said. Sell everything in the earlier section. Zhao blinked. Sell them. Xianing's finger moved down the page and stopped on a cluster of small, unremarkable names. Companies no one had heard of. Companies that didn't look like anything yet. Put everything into these. Lawyer Zhao stared at the names, then at the boy. Xianing, these are unknown companies. I've never even heard of them. Investing isn't something to play around with. Xianing looked up at him calmly. Uncle Zhao, do you trust my father? Zhao went quiet for a moment, then without hesitation. Of course I do. Then trust me this once. Xianing said softly. Dad told me about these. In a dream. It was a weak excuse and he knew it. But something about the boy's eyes made Zhao pause. They were not the eyes of a 10-year-old. Without overthinking it, Zhao nodded. He had no way of knowing what Xianing already knew. That within the same year, those obscure little companies would shake the entire world. They were going to become some of the most powerful business giants on the planet. And behind all of them, hidden in plain sight, would be the most mysterious shareholder anyone had ever tried to trace. With the investment set in motion, Xianing exhaled and settled back into his new life. He gave it a goal: lay flat, do nothing, enjoy everything. In his past life, he had worked himself to death, literally. This time, he wanted the opposite. The kind of life where days passed slowly and comfortably. He told Lawyer Zhao to find him the best private school in the city. Not for academics, not for ambition, purely for the environment. And because, as he casually mentioned, the school cafeteria had excellent food, he started working out, not for discipline, not for competition, simply because he wanted a good physique, sharp lines, the kind of build that made clothes sit well. He began studying the 8 great regional cuisines of China. He taught himself to brew his own rice wine. Eventually, he handed the financial side of things to Lawyer Zhao, who assembled a proper team. The team's leader was a man named Old Wu, a Wall Street veteran, sharp and precise. Xianing poached him by offering 3 times his existing salary. His only instruction was delivered with complete seriousness. Don't bother me. Handle your own business. And if things collapse, let them collapse. Old Wu had looked at him the way one looks at a spoiled rich heir or a clueless landlord playing at wealth. But he was professional enough to follow orders. And so Xianing's life became exactly what he had designed it to be. Boss, that company's stock has tripled. We've cleared 5 billion. Understood. Don't interrupt me while I'm researching Buddha jumps over the wall. Boss, that other company is going public soon. Our original shares are projected to exceed 100 billion in value. Understood. Come try the new rice wine I've been brewing. Boss, that land you bought on a whim last year. The government just designated it as the central business district of a new development zone. It's worth 100 times what you paid. Old Wu slowly, reluctantly adapted to his employer's lifestyle. He even began filtering out investment deals worth only a few billion, deciding they weren't worth disturbing Xianin over. The wealth beneath Xianin's name grew like a snowball rolling downhill, faster and larger every season. But the numbers had stopped meaning anything to him. The only thing that held his interest was finding new ways to make his daily life more comfortable. In the circles of top-tier billionaires, whispers began. A mysterious figure, someone known only as Mr. Ning, a man whose fortune rivaled entire nations, who almost never appeared in public. Like a dragon, you might catch a glimpse of its head, but never its tail. Then Xianin turned 18, and a woman arrived who shattered the peaceful drifting rhythm of his carefully constructed life. Her name was Shay Wanqing. She was his former fiancée, not by choice but by a childhood betrothal arranged between their grandfathers long ago. After Shay Ning's father passed and the family's standing declined, the engagement had quietly faded away. No one brought it up, no one expected it to matter. But no one had anticipated that the inheritance left behind by a dying father would ferment quietly for 10 years and emerge as a colossal business empire. Even with Shay Ning's deliberately low profile, the Ning family's resurgence had not gone unnoticed. And so, on Shay Ning's 18th birthday, old Master Shao arrived at Lawyer Zhao's home, with his most prized granddaughter in tow. The official reason was to honor an old family agreement. The first time Shay Ning saw Shay Wanqing, she was standing in the living room. She wore a crisp white skirt suit, tailored and tasteful. Her long hair was pinned back with careful precision. Her makeup was light but immaculate. She was beautiful, but the kind of beautiful that came wrapped in cold air, like an iceberg warning ships to keep their distance. She had been raised to inherit an empire, rational, powerful, controlled. It was said she had completed a double doctorate by the age of 20. By 22, she had taken over the family business entirely. Her methods were so ruthless that seasoned veterans of the corporate world treated her with caution. In her universe, there was only career, interests, and data. Emotions, she believed, were the most useless of all weaknesses. "Please, have a seat." She sat across from him, crossed her legs. Her eyes moved over him once. A slow, clinical scan, top to bottom, without bothering to hide the assessment. Xianing had come straight from the gym. He was wearing a loose tracksuit. His hair was still damp with sweat. He dropped onto the sofa with the relaxed ease of a man who had nowhere to be, picked up an apple from the side table, and took a slow bite. Xiao Wanqing's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. One eyebrow shifted a fraction of a millimeter. "I heard you stopped studying after high school," she said. "Studying is exhausting," Xianing replied simply. "Then what exactly are you doing with your time?" He thought about it for a moment. Working out, cooking, brewing wine, researching the most comfortable way to lie down. The corner of Xiao Wanqing's mouth curved, not warmly, a mocking smile barely there. "So you're just a useless playboy." "You could put it that way," he said, and shrugged without any particular concern. She let out a short, cold laugh. The contempt in her eyes deepened. "Ning Xianing, let's speak plainly." Her voice was direct, businesslike. "This engagement arrangement was nothing more than a joke our grandfathers made. There's no reason to treat it seriously. The man who marries Xiao Wanqing needs to be someone who can stand beside her as an equal, someone capable, someone strong, not someone whose greatest achievement is eating well and sleeping late." Xianing looked at her with mild interest. "Which is why," she continued, in a tone that left no room for discussion, "I'm asking you to go to my grandfather yourself and dissolve this engagement. As compensation, I can offer you a financial settlement, or arrange a comfortable position within our company." Xianing nearly choked on his apple. She was going to pay him, offer him a job? Did she have any idea at all, that the Xia group she was so proud of didn't even amount to a minor footnote compared to what he held? He looked at her lofty condescending posture, at the charitable tone she used as though she were doing him a favor, and slowly he found it funny. In his past life, he hadn't even had the right to look at someone like her from a distance. Now she was sitting across from him in his guardian's living room, generously offering him pocket money. He set down the apple, wiped his mouth and smiled. "Fine." Xiao Wanqing blinked. Just once, as if she hadn't expected him to agree so easily. "What kind of compensation do you want?" Her expression reset to its usual icy composure. Xianing stood up and crossed the space between them. He leaned down slowly, close enough that she instinctively tried to pull back, but found herself frozen in place. The sharp scent of her perfume filled the air between them. He dropped his voice to just above a whisper. "I don't want money. I don't want a position." A pause. "What I want is for you to go to your grandfather yourself and tell him that you are not worthy of Ning Xianing." Xiao Wanqing's pupils shrank. In her entire life, no one had ever said anything so arrogant to her face. She shoved him back and stood up in one sharp motion. Her face, usually so carefully composed, had gone red. "Don't be shameless. Respect is something a person earns. It isn't handed out." Xianing walked back to the sofa and sat down again. "Miss Xia, you were the one who looked down on me first, weren't you?" She stared at him from above. People like you, born into money and nothing else, drifting through the days, eating, sleeping, waiting to die. What exactly is the difference between you and a parasite? The difference, Xianing said, spreading his arms out across the back of the sofa with a slow smile, is that I'm happy, my life, my choices. Unlike some people, who live like precision machines, calculating gains and losses even in the middle of being angry. His words had landed exactly where they hurt. Xia Wanqing's face went a shade paler. Her hands curled into fists at her sides. Different paths, no common goals. Her voice was clipped, final. I'll end the engagement myself. After today, we are nothing to each other. She turned and walked away without looking back. Her silhouette was proud and upright, like a white swan that had lost a battle but refused to bow its head. Lawyer Zhao emerged from the study with a worried expression. Xianing, wasn't that a bit impulsive? The Xia family carries a lot of influence in the capital. Uncle Zhao, relax, Xianing said without any particular concern. She was the one who brought up ending it. I didn't push her out. And besides, a person who can't even decide their own marriage won't get very far in life. He glanced in the direction Xia Wanqing had disappeared. His eyes were completely still. In his past life, she had been a moon hanging unreachably in the sky, something he had no right to even look at. But in this life, when he looked at her, all he saw was someone trapped inside her own family's expectations. A person to be pitied, not admired. He was quietly curious about one thing though. What expression would be on her face when the day finally came? That, he thought, would be interesting to see. The storm over the engagement passed quickly. Xia Wanqing kept her word. Within days, the Xia family made an official announcement dissolving the arrangement. Clean. Final. Xianing returned to his peaceful, unhurried life with quiet satisfaction. Old Wu's calls still came every day, on schedule, reporting new milestones, new numbers, new zeros added to figures Xianing had long stopped tracking. His personal wealth had grown so large that calculating it felt like a pointless exercise. Yet every morning, he pulled on a worn tracksuit, climbed into an ordinary compact car, and made his usual rounds between the gym and the vegetable market. Then, one afternoon, he walked through a doorway and found something he hadn't been looking for at all. It was a small dessert shop tucked deep inside the winding lanes of the old city district, the kind of place you could walk past 100 times and never notice. The exterior was modest, decorated in an antique style, with faded wooden panels and a hand-carved sign by the door. He stopped. Today's special, osmanthus sugar steamed chestnut cake. That dessert, his father used to make it for him when he was small. He hadn't tasted it in years. He pushed the door open. A soft chime rang as the wind moved through it. A girl came out from the back, wiping her hands on her apron. She wore a light quippao, simple and neat. Her long hair fell to her waist. No makeup. Her expression carried a gentle, slightly startled confusion, like someone who hadn't expected a customer at this hour. The moment Xianing saw her, his chest did something strange. A single missed beat. Quiet and involuntary. She wasn't striking in the way Xia Wanqing was. Not the kind of beauty that stopped a room. But she was something else entirely. Like a clear spring in the middle of a forest. Pure. Unhurried. The kind of person you felt calmer just by being near. Do you still have the osmanthus sugar steamed chestnut cake? He asked. The girl blinked. Then a gentle smile appeared on her face, raising the smallest ripples on the surface. Yes, we do. Please sit down. I'll bring it out for you. Her voice matched the rest of her. Soft, warm, pleasant. He sat by the window. A few minutes later, she set a plate in front of him. The chestnut cakes were shaped like small plum blossoms, each one dusted with crystallized osmanthus sugar, a faint sweet fragrance rising from them like steam. Xianing picked one up and placed it in his mouth. That taste. Exactly the same. Exactly as he remembered. The way his father used to make it. Something warm moved through him from somewhere deep. His eyes went slightly damp before he could stop them. How is it? She asked, watching him from across the table, chin resting on her hands with an eager, anticipating look. It tastes exactly like my father's, he said, and meant it completely. Her eyes lit up. This recipe came from my grandmother, she said, leaning forward slightly. She always said almost no one makes it anymore. Your grandmother must have been a remarkable person. She sat up a little straighter and puffed out her chest with unmistakable pride. She was. My name is Xinju, by the way. This shop is mine. Ning Yi, he said. And just like that, they were talking like old friends. On that afternoon, he learned a great deal about her. She came from a long culinary lineage. Her ancestors had served as imperial chefs across generations. She had grown up surrounded by these traditional crafts, these nearly forgotten flavors. She had no interest in the 9-to-5 rhythm of corporate life, so she had opened this small shop herself, not for profit, but simply to keep these flavors alive and pass them forward. They both preferred a slower pace of life. They both carried a stubborn, deep affection for traditional culture. They could talk for hours about food, winemaking, old music, and never run out of things to say. The sunlight shifted through the curtains and fell across her as she spoke, giving her a warm golden outline. He watched the way her eyes sparkled when she talked about something she loved. He noticed the small unconscious smile that came to her face without her realizing it. Something quiet settled inside him, in a corner of his chest that he hadn't known was empty. He came back the next day, and every day after that, without missing once. Sometimes it was to try a new dessert she had made. Sometimes it was for a cup of tea brewed by her hands. But most of the time, he simply sat and watched her work. The shop ran entirely on her, preparing ingredients, making the goods, serving customers, cleaning up. She did everything herself, and she never complained about any of it. Xianing began helping. First washing dishes, then sorting vegetables. Eventually she gave him access to the back kitchen, so he could watch her make the desserts up close. The kitchen was small but well organized. Every utensil had its place. When she worked, her focus was like a devoted artist in front of a canvas. Watching her fingers transform simple ingredients into delicate, beautiful things was a kind of pleasure in itself. One afternoon, Xianing had come straight from the gym. He was still in a fitted workout tank, and when he lifted a heavy bag of flour for her, the muscles across his arms and shoulders tensed visibly with the effort. Zinzu was standing behind him. She stared. Her cheeks went faintly pink. "Ning Yi," she said, "you have a really good physique." He set the bag down, turned around, and, deliberately, straightened his posture. "Want to touch?" He expected her to go red and flee. Instead, she reached out. Her fingertips were slightly cool, carrying the faint, sweet scent of glutinous rice flour. She pressed them gently against the lines of his abdomen, lightly, as though she were examining something fascinating she'd never encountered before. "Firm," she said, eyes wide and round with the expression of someone who had just made a great discovery. Xianing's entire body went rigid. A wave of warmth shot from his core straight to his head. He had lived 2 full lives, and in neither of them had a girl ever caught him so completely off guard. Her expression, so innocent, so genuinely curious, left him not knowing whether to laugh or panic. He reached out and caught her fidgeting little hand. It was impossibly soft, as if it had no bones in it at all. He lowered his voice and leaned close to her ear. Her face went the color of a ripe apple in an instant. She yanked her hand back, spun around, and fled into the back kitchen at full speed. He couldn't hold back the laughter. This girl, he thought, still grinning, is genuinely adorable. Their daily conversations continued, and something between them grew, slowly, steadily, like warmth spreading through a cold room. They never ran out of things to talk about: food and winemaking, kung fu opera and the gukin, old recipes and older stories. Every time he thought he had mapped her out, she surprised him again. She could play the bawu flute, she painted ink-wash landscapes. She even knew how to make her own rouge from flowers and minerals, a craft so old most people didn't know it existed anymore. She felt somehow like someone who had wandered in from an earlier century, carrying the grace and warmth of a classical era in everything she did. Xianing found himself looking forward to each day in a way he hadn't in either lifetime. Looking forward to her smile, to the small unguarded moments, to the gentle nonsense they fell into together without trying. He even began thinking, quietly, without admitting it fully, that maybe if she were part of his days going forward, it wouldn't be so bad at all. He gave her shop a name of his own choosing. My Jade Kitchen. She gave him a nickname in return, the Lying Down Landlord. One afternoon, a young man arrived at the shop in a flashy sports car. He was the kind of person who wore money loudly. The moment he walked in and saw Xinju, his eyes stuck to her like glue. He tried to buy the entire shop on the spot, and then told Xinju to come with him. She declined. He didn't take it well. Insulted and furious, the young man began making a scene. Xianing was in the back kitchen at the time, working on a new recipe. The moment he heard the noise, he was through the door. He took in the wreckage of the shop. He saw Xinju's small face, drained of all color, pale with fear. Something ignited in his chest, a fury unlike anything he had felt in either of his lives. He stepped in front of Xinju and fixed the young man with a cold, level stare. "Leave. Who do you think you are?" The young man shot back, jabbing a finger towards Xianing's face, dripping with arrogance. "You dare interfere in my business?" Xianing said nothing. He reached into his pocket, took out his phone, and called Old Wu. "Old Wu, run a license plate for me. Within 5 minutes, I want him and his family's company erased from the capital." The young man burst out laughing. "Oh, you scared me. What movie do you think you're in? 5 minutes and my family's gone? Do you even know who my father is?" Xianing watched him with calm, empty eyes. The way one looks at something already finished. Less than 3 minutes passed. The young man's phone rang. He answered it. The smile on his face froze solid. "What? What did you just say? The company accounts are frozen? All our partnerships canceled? How is that? Who did we offend?" His voice cracked with fear. His legs gave out beneath him. The phone slipped from his hand and clattered to the floor. He looked up at Xianing, and the expression on his face was the expression of someone looking at a monster. His lips trembled. He couldn't produce a single word. You can go now, Xiaoning said in the same quiet tone he might use to dismiss a minor inconvenience. The young man scrambled to his feet and fled from the shop. The shop went quiet again. Xinju was staring at him. In her beautiful eyes, behind the lingering shock, a small involuntary glimmer of awe, Xiaoning turned and looked at her. Something in his expression softened in a way it rarely did. He reached out and gently wiped the tear tracks still faintly visible on her cheeks. You don't need to be afraid, he said. I'm here. He didn't wait for her to respond. He lowered his head and kissed her. Her lips were exactly as soft as he had imagined. They carried the faint sweetness of osmanthus candy. She stiffened at first, like a startled fawn. Then slowly, clumsily, she began to kiss him back. It was light, barely there. A first kiss in every sense, but it sent a current straight through his chest. When he finally, reluctantly, pulled away, Xinju had her head ducked so low her chin nearly touched her collarbone. Her face was so red it looked like it might start bleeding. She couldn't bring herself to look at him. Zhu, he said softly. He cupped her face in both hands and gently tilted it upward, until she had no choice but to meet his eyes. Will you be my girlfriend? Her teeth caught her lower lip. A long pause. Then, in a voice barely louder than a mosquito's hum, she said, yes. Xiaoning smiled like a complete idiot. He picked her up and spun her around. Once, twice, several times. She grabbed onto his neck to steady herself, laughing a bright, clear laugh like the ringing of a silver bell, slightly dizzy from the spinning. He held her tightly in his arms when he finally stopped, and something settled inside him, warm and certain and complete. 2 lifetimes. And this was the first time he truly understood what it meant for a heart to race. What happiness actually felt like. You were really scary just now, she mumbled against his shoulder. One phone call and a whole company collapses. Ning Yi, who exactly are you? He looked into her clear, innocent eyes. There was no hiding it anymore. He knew that. Didn't I tell you? He flicked her nose gently. I'm just a laid-back landowner. I just happen to own quite a lot of land. He told her the selective version of the truth. No mention of rebirth. No mention of things that couldn't be explained. Only that his father had left behind a very large inheritance, and that he had made some investments with it, and that those investments had done reasonably well. Xinju blinked slowly. Reasonably well, she repeated. The kind of reasonably well that bankrupts a company in 5 minutes. How much exactly? He thought about it. He wanted to frame it in a way she could hold. Enough to buy tens of thousands of dessert shops like this one. Xinju drew a sharp breath. She counted on her fingers for a moment. Then she looked up at him with wide, stunned eyes. You're a billionaire. He nodded. She went quiet. A small unease moved through his chest. He had feared this, that the gap between their worlds would make her retreat, that the numbers would change something. But the silence stretched longer than he expected. Then she raised her head. She looked at him with the most serious expression he had ever seen on her face. Ning Yi, listen carefully. Starting today, your money is my money. And my money is still my money. Xiaoning stared at her for 1 full second. Then he burst out laughing so hard he had to hold onto the counter. He picked her up again, spinning her until she squealed, until she clung to his neck with both arms and laughed that silver bell laugh of hers. Fine, he thought, still grinning. Whatever you say. He had not chosen wrong. He loved Xinju, not the halo of her family name, not the charm of the rare skills she carried. He loved her, this small, warm, endlessly surprising person who could make him feel like the world was worth waking up in. After Xinju, his laid-back life grew brighter, fuller. They researched new dessert recipes together. They experimented with new wines. She dragged him to the morning market before the sun was fully up, and stood her ground bargaining over single coins until her cheeks turned red from the effort. He took her to 3 Michelin-starred restaurants and watched her taste cuisines from across the world with the focused reverence of a scholar. She liked touching his abs. She said they felt like a washboard and seemed personally delighted by this every single time. He liked kissing her cheek, just to watch the shiver move through her and the color bloom across her face. They were disgustingly, unapologetically in love. Old Wu suffered through it daily. Boss, the Hangguo Group acquisition papers need your signature. Leave them there. Let me finish making her rock sugar pear first. Boss, there's an invitation to a European royal banquet. Then old Wu mentioned a name. President Xia. His hand stilled. Xia Wanqing. He hadn't heard that name in a very long time. What does she want? He asked, keeping his tone indifferent. Old Wu explained. The Xia Group had been running into serious cash flow problems. They needed a major investment urgently. Word had reached them that Yifan Shenfeng was performing exceptionally well, and they were seeking a cooperation proposal. Yifan Shenfeng. The investment company Xiaoning had asked Old Wu to build one small corner of a vast, sprawling empire, but even that single corner stood taller than the entire Xia Group. He let out a slow, quiet breath. How things turn. That cold, lofty CEO who had once sat across from him and told him he wasn't worthy of her was now coming to ask him for investment. A slow, playful smile settled on his lips. If she wants to talk, he said, she can come to my Imperial Kitchen. The Imperial Kitchen, his private name for Jinzu's little dessert shop. Old Wu looked confused. Tell her to bring a full proposal. I want to see her sincerity. He was genuinely looking forward to it. The moment Xia Wanqing walked through that door and saw Xianing and Shinzu together, the moment she understood that the person she had dismissed so easily, the one she had looked down at from such a comfortable height, had become someone she now had to look up to. That expression. He was genuinely patiently waiting for it. The day Xia Wanqing arrived, Xianing was in the back kitchen. He was making Shinzu's favorite, crab roe soup dumplings. He wore a white chef's coat with an apron tied over it. Flour still dusted across his hands. Shinzu was attached to his back like a small, content cat, her arms looped around his waist, chin resting on his shoulder. She was stealing bites of freshly steamed crab roe between sentences, and simultaneously issuing a running commentary of instructions. The pleats on that one are uneven. That's only visible to you. This one barely passes. I, your master, shall approve it. He let her be completely insufferable. Every so often, he'd turn his head and press a kiss to her cheek mid-sentence. The kitchen was warm and fragrant. The atmosphere between them was light and sweet and entirely their own. And then the door opened. Xia Wanqing stepped inside. She wore a sharp black professional suit. Her hair was, as always, perfectly set. Her face carried a thin layer of exhaustion beneath the surface. Anxiety, carefully managed, but she held her composure with every ounce of discipline she had. Then she saw what was in front of her, and she froze completely. In her wildest dreams, Xia Wanqing could never have imagined this. The legendary, mysterious, untouchable figure behind the deal that could save or sink her company, the one everyone in finance whispered about, but no one could identify, was him. The same man she had once dismissed as useless, as waste, as something beneath her notice. And now that waste stood in front of her, wearing an apron, hands dusted with flour, making soup dumplings in the back kitchen of a small dessert shop, while a girl hugged him from behind with the easy familiarity of someone who belonged there. Xia Wanqing's face drained of color in an instant. Her usually composed, rational eyes filled with shock, confusion, and a flicker of something she likely didn't even register herself. President Xia, you've arrived. Xianing reacted as though he'd only just noticed her. He wiped his hands, untied his apron, and offered a light, casual greeting. Shinju peeked out from behind him, curious, studying Xia Wanqing with open interest. Then she leaned in and whispered, Ning Yi, who's this? She looks really fierce, kind of like a beggar. Xianing smiled and flicked her nose. Shinju couldn't hold back a laugh. Xia Wanqing's face went from white to green to red in rapid succession. A truly spectacular transformation. Her fist clenched so tight her nails dug into her palms. Through gritted teeth, she managed, Ning Yi, don't push this too far. Too far, Xianing raised an eyebrow. President Xia, if I recall correctly, you were the one who said we had nothing to do with each other. And yet here you are, on my doorstep. If you're not here to beg, why exactly are you here? He led Shinju to a table outside and set a steaming basket of soup dumplings in front of her. Try these, fresh off the steamer. Then, almost as an afterthought, he glanced toward Xia Wanqing and gestured to a chair. President Xia, sit. Say what you came to say. His tone was casual, dismissive, the tone of someone brushing off a minor interruption. This was nothing like the negotiation she had walked in prepared for. There was no tension to navigate, no verbal sparring to win, just raw, unguarded dominance, the kind that didn't need to announce itself. She took a steadying breath and pulled a thick folder from her bag, sliding it across the table. Mr. Ning, this is Xia Corporation's 5-year development plan, along with our current financing proposal. I hope... Xia Ning raised a hand, cutting her off mid-sentence. President Xia, I think you've misunderstood something. He leaned back in his chair unhurried. Are you here to ask me for something or not? Because I have zero interest in your plan. I just have one question for you. He gestured first to Shinju, then to himself. Do you think she and I make a good match? Xia Wanqing's entire body went rigid. She stared at him. Then her gaze drifted to Shinju, who was happily taking small bites of a dumpling, utterly unbothered, glowing with quiet contentment. Xia Wanqing's lips parted slightly. No sound came out. A match. The question cut through her like a blade aimed straight at the center of everything she'd built her identity on. The man in front of her was wealthy beyond measure, powerful beyond comparison, and he was cooking with his own hands for an ordinary girl in plain clothes. The tenderness in his eyes was something Xia Wanqing had never once seen directed at anyone, let alone at her. And that girl, without status, without ambition, without anything Xia Wanqing had spent her whole life accumulating, radiated the kind of happiness that only comes from being genuinely completely loved. The two of them sat together like a picture of a peaceful life, and she, in her expensive suit, clutching a folder full of numbers, looked by comparison like a clown, begging for scraps of mercy from a man she had once told to leave her world. The irony of it hit her like a wave. Her pride, her composure, all of it cracked at once. You two are a good match, she finally managed. Her voice didn't sound like her own. What little color remained in her face disappeared completely. She knew exactly what he was doing, handing her own words back to her, the same words she had once used to dismiss him. Ning Yi, she said, closing her eyes as if gathering every last reserve of strength she had. I admit I was blind back then. I'm sorry, But business is business, and this matter is personal. The cooperation with the Shah Group is genuinely critical for us right now. I'm asking you. Begging me, Xianing corrected, cutting in smoothly. President Shah, in what capacity are you begging me? As my ex-fiancé? Or as a defeated opponent? Xin completely lost by this point, said nothing, wisely staying quiet. Instead, she reached over and quietly placed a small steamed bun into Xianing's mouth, then looked at him with her clear, steady eyes. Silent support. That tiny gesture broke something in Xia Wanxing completely. She saw it. The wordless understanding between them. An intimacy woven into their blood. Into the easy rhythm of their lives. Something she had spent her entire existence chasing power instead of building. She had always believed she was climbing toward the pinnacle of everything that mattered. But for the first time, she understood how cold and empty that climb had left her. She had conquered an entire world, and lost the one person in it who mattered. Ning Yi, she said again, her voice now thick with tears. Please, consider this my plea. And then she broke. The woman who had always been ice, composed, untouchable, rational to a fault, was crying. Real tears, falling onto the proposal she had so carefully prepared, the ink slowly bleeding under the spreading water spots. Xianing watched her without a flicker of satisfaction, no pleasure, just indifference. In his past life, her tears might have softened him, might have moved him, not anymore. He picked up the proposal without even glancing at it, and dropped it straight into the trash can beside the table. President Xia, he said, standing and looking down at her. Let me tell you something else. I have absolutely no interest in acquiring a company standing on the edge of bankruptcy. Especially not when its owner is you. He didn't look at her again. He took Xinju's hand and turned back toward the kitchen. Behind him, Xia Wanxing's broken sobs echoed through the empty shop. He knew, without a doubt, that her pride had been completely shattered today, and that this was only the beginning. Xia Wanxing left, utterly devastated. Xianing didn't spare her another thought, because waiting at his door was someone even more unwelcome, Lilan. His biological mother. He had no idea how she'd found Jinzu's shop, but there she was, blocking the entrance. 10 years had passed. She looked considerably older now and exhausted. The woman who had once taken such care of her appearance now had visible wrinkles around her eyes and streaks of gray in her hair. Her clothes were cheap. Her face was a mask of calculation barely hidden beneath a thin layer of performance. It was clear, at a glance, that the years had not been kind to her or to Xiao. In his past life, they had burned through his father's fortune recklessly. Xiao had developed a gambling addiction and eventually lost everything. In this life, without that same money to burn, their situation was apparently even worse. The moment she spotted Xianing, she lunged toward him, launching straight into the same performance she'd given a decade ago. Say what you came to say, Xianing said coldly. Otherwise, keep crying. Either way, I don't have time. How can you talk to your own mother like this? Lilan wailed. I know you're still angry with me, but Mom had her reasons back then. Your Uncle Zhao and I have suffered so much over these years. He was scammed in a business deal, buried in debt. We don't even have money for food anymore. Shen Yi, you're successful now. You can't just ignore your own mother like this. She wiped at her eyes, slipping easily into the role of victim, nearly dropping to her knees right there. Xianing's brow furrowed. Jinzu stepped out of the shop behind him, looking between them, visibly confused. Ning Yi, who is this? Someone irrelevant, Xianing said, stepping in front of Jinzu, shielding her from the scene. Lilan's head snapped up. She jabbed a finger towards Jinzu. Irrelevant. I'm his mother, and who are you? Some little vixen trying to worm your way into my son's life? After our family's money, are you? Jinzu went pale. Xianing's expression turned dark. Completely, utterly dark. He spoke slowly. I'll say this one last time. Leave. I'm not going anywhere, Lilan snapped back. Ning Yi, you're giving me money today, not 1 million, 10 million, or I'll sit right here and never leave, and I'll sue you for abandoning your own mother. Lilan's voice rose, sharp and demanding. She still believed he was the same pushover from years ago, someone she could manipulate, someone who'd worry about his reputation. She was wrong. Xianing looked at her, and a slow smile spread across his face. Fine, you want to sue me? I'll give you that chance. He pulled out his phone and called Old Wu. Old Wu, find the best law firm in the capital, and get in touch with the biggest media outlets. I'm holding a press conference. Theme, me and my biological mother, settling the accounts. Lilan froze. She hadn't expected this. She had expected him to fear exposure. Instead, he was about to broadcast everything. You wouldn't dare, she said, though her voice had lost all its earlier confidence. Watch me, Xianing said, hanging up. A cold sneer settled on his face. Lilan, maybe you've forgotten what I chose 10 years ago. Back then, I could give up everything for money. 10 years later, I can just as easily destroy your reputation for a little peace of mind. You like performing, don't you? I'll give you a bigger stage than you've ever had. He looked at her the way one looks at something already dead. Lilan trembled under his gaze. For the first time, she truly understood. The boy standing in front of her was no longer someone she could control. He was something else entirely now. She broke under the pressure and fled in humiliation. The world went quiet again. Ning Yi, Xinju asked softly, holding his hand with concern. Was that really your mother? She used to be, he said. He turned her hand over and pressed a kiss to her palm. Not anymore. From now on, you're my only family. Xinju looked at him, her eyes filling with quiet sympathy. She didn't ask anything else. She just rose on her toes and wrapped him in a warm hug. Don't be afraid. I'm with you now. He held her, and felt something, the last residue of darkness from his past life, slowly dissolve under the warmth she carried with her. She's still here, he thought. That's enough. He had assumed that scaring Lilin off would be the end of it. He had underestimated her completely. A few days later, the internet exploded with stories about him. The truth behind mysterious billionaire Ning Yi, modern-day ingrate. He refused a wealthy heiress and abandoned his destitute mother. Today's secret, a 100 billion rags to riches story built on squeezing his own mother dry. Biological mother's tearful accusation. My son was seduced by a vixen. One tear-jerking headline after another painted him as an ungrateful money-grubbing son blinded by a pretty face, while Lilin was framed as a long-suffering impoverished mother abandoned by her own child. Naturally, Xinju became cast as the home-wrecking vixen who had destroyed the sacred mother-son bond. There were candid photos too, him and Xinju eating at a roadside diner, presented as evidence of his secret double life. Public opinion exploded. Thousands of people who had no idea what the truth actually was got swept up in the manufactured outrage and launched a coordinated attack against him online. For the first time, his name was trending, for all the wrong reasons. Some people went further. They doxed Xinju's shop, threw paint at the storefront, dumped trash by the entrance. Ning Yi, I'm not some. I know, he said quietly. I know you're not. Don't be afraid. I'll handle this. The look in his eyes turned darker than it had ever been. Lilin. Xiao, you've really managed to make me angry now. He had been willing to simply leave them to their pathetic lives, but they had gone after the people he cared about most. They didn't get to complain about him being ruthless after that. He had old Wu run a full investigation. The results came back fast. Lilin and Xiao were indeed behind it. They'd hired a third-rate marketing firm, bought fake followers, and personally scripted and directed the entire smear campaign. But what surprised him more was finding Xiao Wanqing's shadow behind it as well. She hadn't participated directly, but the PR firm operating under her company's banner had played a role in fanning the flames of the public backlash. Perfect, he thought. My shameless mother on one side, my bitter ex on the other. Since you two like teaming up so much, I'll send you to hell together. He didn't rush to clear his name. He didn't have the trending topics taken down. He let public outrage build, let it climb as high as it could go, because the higher it climbed, the harder it would fall. 3 days later, when online condemnation had reached its absolute peak, he held the press conference. He'd built the entire thing for Lilin. The venue was the grand banquet hall of the capital's top 7-star hotel. He'd invited over 100 major media outlets from across the country. The scale was unprecedented. Lilin was invited too. She arrived with a smug smile, clearly assuming he was finally caving, that he'd pay her off to make this go away. Xiao Wanqing was there as well, watching to see how he'd handle the situation. Xianing wore a perfectly tailored suit. He walked onto the stage holding Jinzu's hand. She was visibly nervous, her palms damp, but he gave her a reassuring smile. Camera flashes exploded across the room. He cleared his throat and looked out at the wall of microphones and cameras. Hello everyone, my name is Ning Yi. Today I've gathered you all here to tell you a story about choices. He told the entire story, from the age of 10, exactly as it had happened. His father's will, Lilin's threats, his decision. He spoke calmly, almost flatly, with no emotion, as though narrating someone else's life. The hall fell into dead silence. Every journalist in the room sat frozen, clearly not expecting this to be the truth. Lilin's face went white. She tried to climb onto the stage to argue, but the security he'd arranged held her firmly back. Of course, Xianing said, words alone aren't proof. He snapped his fingers. The massive screen behind him lit up. A recording began to play. Audio from the funeral, 10 years ago. Lilin's whispered threat, captured in crystal clarity. If you say one wrong word, I will end you. You're my son. Your money is my money. Lawyer Zhao had recovered it from a recording device he'd carried that day. Xianing's father had always been a careful, suspicious man, and Zhao had kept the device, just in case. No one had imagined it would matter, until now. The hall erupted. Every camera swung toward Lilin, whose face had turned the color of ash. This is fake, she screamed hysterical. It's been doctored. Xianing smirked. Fake? Then what about this? Is this fake too? The screen changed again. A new video began playing, footage from 1 month after his father's death. Lilin and Zhao in an upscale restaurant, raising glasses in celebration. I told you, that kid's an idiot. He'll definitely choose you. He's my son. I know him inside and out. The moment we get that 200 million, we're traveling the world, to our beautiful future. Cheers. Both of them looked radiant in the footage, genuinely glowingly happy. Old Wu had recovered the clip from the restaurant's security archive using methods Xianing didn't ask too many questions about. The evidence was airtight. Lilan could no longer deny anything. It's not over yet, Xianing said coldly. More evidence appeared on the screen. Xiao's gambling debts, records of his father's belongings being sold off, even testimonies from neighbors describing the abuse Xianing had suffered as a child. Piece by piece, the truth unfolded, each revelation more damning than the last. The loving mother with her hidden struggles was reduced, in the face of undeniable evidence, to nothing but a cruel joke. The press conference became, from start to finish, a complete public unmasking of Lilan and Xiao, laid bare for the entire country to see. And Xianing simply stood there, calm, watching. The big screen finally froze, on a single document. Xianing raised the microphone. I'm formally announcing this here today. As of this moment, I am severing every tie I have with Lilan. No relationship. He paused. His gaze drifted toward the corner of the room, toward Xia Wanqing. Furthermore, against every individual and entity who maliciously slandered me and my fiancée, Miss Xin Zhu, my legal team will pursue full liability, including the PR firm operating under the Xia Group's banner. Xia Wanqing's body jolted. She lifted her head and met his ice-cold gaze. All the color drained from her face. She understood, in that moment, exactly what he had done. He had declared war on her, and she had already lost. That night, the press conference became the top headline on every media outlet in the country. Public opinion flipped overnight, completely violently. Trending topics exploded across every platform. Lilan and Xiao became pariahs, reviled by everyone. They didn't just face moral condemnation, they faced criminal charges, enough to keep them behind bars for the rest of their lives. The Xia Group was dragged down with them. Its stock dropped 30% in a single night. Standing on the edge of bankruptcy, Xia Wanqing scrambled for help everywhere and found nothing but closed doors. No one dared associate with her now. For the first time in her life, she tasted true isolation, true abandonment. A few days later, Xian Ning received an unexpected call. Xia Wanqing, her voice was no longer cold and composed. It was hoarse, exhausted. Ning Yi, I misjudged you. That was the first thing she said. I'm not calling so you'll go easy on me. I just want to ask you one thing. Go ahead. If I hadn't canceled the engagement back then, what would you have done? Nothing, Xian Ning said without a second's hesitation. Xia Wanqing, you were never part of my world. You never could have been, because you never understood me. You only ever saw what you wanted to see. You only ever liked the version of me you imagined in your head. From the very beginning, all I ever wanted was to be an ordinary man, cooking meals for someone he loves. There was a long silence on the other end. Then finally, a small broken sound, like something cracking quietly. I understand, she said, and the line went dead. Xian Ning knew she would never trouble him again. Maybe she'd rebuild her empire someday, in her own way. But there would always be one piece missing from her world, the piece called happiness. He had already found his. He set down the phone and walked into the kitchen. Xin Zhu was there, wrapping wontons he'd bought for her, humming softly to herself, clumsily folding dumplings with a smear of flour across her cheek. The moment she saw him walk in, her face lit up. Chef, come help your head of the imperial kitchen. I want 3 fresh filling dumplings today. Sunlight poured through the window, falling across her face. Warm, golden, beautiful. He walked over, wrapped his arms around her from behind, and pressed a kiss to the flour smudge on her nose. As you wish, my queen. Wealth was just fleeting clouds. In this moment, none of it mattered at all. All he wanted was to hold on to the girl standing in front of him, to cook for her, for the rest of his life, to watch her smile, for the rest of his life. He had been reborn into this life, and he had used $200 million to cut every tie to his past. But he never imagined that in the end, he would get something far greater back, an entire world. A world with her in it. And that's the end of the story. If you have enjoyed it, then don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel.